So in this video, we're going to talk about solving radical equations in algebra. And it's really going to be easy as far as setting it up goes. There might be a little bit of work involved in actually finding out what the solutions are, but it'll be fairly straightforward. It'll might look a little intimidating at first, but it's not going to be that bad. So this first problem that we're given is solve for 5x plus 66, the square root of 5x plus 66 equals x. Now, I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. In algebra and any kind of math, or when we have an equation, when we have this equal sign, that means it's equivalent to. So you've got the square root of 5x plus 66 is the equivalent of x. So if we do the same thing to both sides of this equation, we're not changing this overall statement. So, we can add 100 to both sides, so we can subtract 100, we can divide by pi, we can do whatever we want as long as we do it to both sides of the equation. So in this case, since we've got this square root and we really don't want to do anything more than what we have to eliminate that square root, what we can do is square that side of the equation. So we'll square that side of the equation, and then we'll also have to square the right side of the equation. So we'll get the square root of 5x plus 66 squared equals x squared. I don't know. Just to be consistent here, I'm going to show you that. There we go. So, square root 5x plus 66 squared equals x squared. Well, the square root of 5x plus 66 squared gives us 5x plus 66. And that's equal to x squared. Now, along the same lines, if we subtract 5x and 66 from both sides of this equation, we can rewrite it as 0 equals x squared plus 5x. Sorry, we subtract from both sides, so it'll give us a negative. Got to make sure of your signs here. 5x squared minus 5x minus 66 equals 0. Now this, we could use the quadratic equation, but it's a little bit more work than what really needs to be done right now. But we can factor it as x and x, and then we can look at and say, what are the factors of 66, negative 66, that when added together will give us a negative 5. Well, that'll be a negative 11 and a positive 6. So, negative 11 times x is minus 11x, plus a positive 6x, give us a negative 5x. So, our solutions, our possible solutions, are x equals 11 and x equals a negative 6. Well, now we've got to check that out and make sure this is actually true. So we can go back to our original equation, say, okay, oops, the square root of 5 times x, in this case would be 11, plus 66 equals 11. Well, that would be the square root of 55 plus 66 is 121, and that equals 11, and that checks out. So that's a solution. Now, when x is negative 6, though, you get 5 times a negative 6 plus 66 square root. Scroll over a little bit, give us a little bit more room. Equals a negative 6. Well, 5 times a negative 6 is negative 30. Plus 66 will give us 36. And does that equal negative 6? Well, the square root of 36 could be a positive 6 or it could be a negative 6. So that is a possible solution. So that does check out. So our solution set in this case is x equals 11 or x equals negative 6. So the next problem that we're being asked is, drum roll please, square root of 2x plus 19 minus 8 equals x. So in this case, what we'll want to do is we'll want to isolate this radical and have that equivalent to our x and our constant here. So we'll add 8 to both sides of the equation. We don't want to square it right off the top of the bat because then you'll still end up with a radical equation. You'll have a 2x plus, if you were to do that, you'd have a square root of 2x plus 19 minus 8 squared, which would give us a 2x plus 19, and then you'd have a minus 16 times a square root of 2x plus 19. And we don't want to do that because the idea is to get rid of this radical sign. So then we'll make that equal to x plus 8 by adding 8 to both sides of this equation. Now we can come along and square it. Square both sides of the equation. And we have to square this term as this. X plus 8 squared is not the same thing as x squared plus 8 squared because we have to consider this 8 times x term also. If we just went with x squared plus 8 squared, then we'd end up with a completely different answer. So we have to square it like this. So now you'll end up with 2x plus 19, and that is equal to x squared plus 8x. Here, we'll go ahead and draw it out so you don't have to visualize it. You'll have x plus 8 times x plus 8. So that will equal x times x is x squared. 8 times x is 8x, plus 8 times x is another 8x, so that's 16x. And then 8 times 8 is 64. So now we can do the same thing and subtract 2x from both sides and a 19 from both sides. So we'll end up with 0 on this side. End up with x squared. 16x minus 2x is a positive 14x. 64 minus 19, let's see, that'll give us a 45, a positive 45. So now we can once again factor this, and we'll find the factors of 45 that will add up to 14. I'll just have a little factoring refresher here. So the factors of 45 will have 1 and 45. 2 doesn't go in equally, so we'll have 3 and 15. 4 does not go in. Excuse me. No, 4 does not go in. 5 and 9. And 6 and 7 and 8 do not go in, so then they'll just repeat. So we need to find the factors of 45 that when added together will give us 14. Well, we could check each one of them, but we know that 5 plus 9 is equal to 14. So those are the factors that we're wanting, and it'll come over and say x plus 5, x plus 9. So our possible solutions of x are -5 and x equals -9. So we can check that out again to our original equation. When x is -5, we'll get the square root of -5 times 2 is -10 plus 19. Does that equal -5 plus 8? All we're doing is going back to our original equation here. Square root of 2x plus 19 equals x plus 8, and substituting one of our solutions, x equals -5, into that. So -10 plus 19 is 9. -5 plus 8 is 3. Square root of 9 is 3, so that checks out. If we substitute a -9, we get the square root of -18. 2 times -9 is 18. Plus 19 equals -9 plus, scroll a little more, plus 8. So -18 plus 19 gives us the square root of 1, and that's equal to -1. Well, the square root of 1 can be a positive 1 or a -1. So that does check out as a possible solution. Because again, +1 times +1 is 1. -1 times a -1 is also 1. So that does check out. So that's how we solve our radical equations. The idea is you don't want to use these radical terms, the square root term, more than what you have to. So you want to get rid of it before you do any other equations. And the way you get rid of it is to square both sides of the equation. So like on this one, like I said, we want to get rid of this. We don't want to square it right off the bat because then we'll still end up with radicals. So we want to isolate the radical on one side of the equation before we square to get rid of it. So that's how we solve radical equations.